Let me take a moment and talk about Riverside.fm. It allows you to record studio quality audio and up to 4K video. When you need to record audio and video, Riverside.fm can do it. So if you're looking for a hero platform for all your recording needs, from podcasts to webinars to any video content, Riverside.fm. I've got a promo code for you where you'll receive a 30% discount on the first 3 months of your subscription. I'll give it to you twice. The promo code is SHIPIT. All one word, SHIPIT, and you'll pick up a 30% discount on your first 3 months of your subscription. Riverside.fm.
We've learned that professional football first organized and the NFL started as the American Professional Football Association after a September meeting at a car dealership in Canton, Ohio in 1920. We also know that the NFL didn't have a title game until 1933. But what if there was a National Football League and a championship tournament played in 1902? Well, that's kind of this story, but we'll bring you the rest here in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. And welcome to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history and another beginning of the week. It's Monday, and we're going to talk about some early professional football teams. Well, not just one team, but we're going to talk about an early league. According to the Pro Football Hall of Fame's website, there was a National Football League decades before 1922 when the American Professional Football Association changed its name to the National Football League. According to a timeline on the ProFootballHOF.com, in 1902, baseball's Philadelphia Athletics, managed by Connie Mack, and the Philadelphia Phillies joined the Pittsburgh Stars along with another New York State team, the Watertown Red Blacks, to form a professional football group that they named themselves the National Football League. Yes, that's right. There was an NFL long before Thorpe, Palace, Hay, Carr, and the rest of them met in Canton, Ohio in 1920. The Pro Football Research Association has a pretty awesome article that was written in 1980's edition of an organization's Coffin Corner magazine titled The First Football World Series. And you can follow a link to that on our website at pigskindispatch.com that accompanies this podcast in the show notes. That Coffin Corner article fills us in that the first three Pennsylvania squads had formed what they called the National Football League, beat everybody else into the ground, and tangled their league standings so monstrously that no one is certain to this day who won. The fourth football power, Watertown, humbly claimed themselves to be champions of the world already. Now, the author explains that this is a real head-scratcher on the Watertown claim, as they got crushed at home when the Athletics visited the Red Blacks in October. The Pro Football Hall of Fame's website tells a different top team altogether from that league. It says all three teams claimed the Pro Championship for the year, but the league president, Dave Barry, named the Stars the champions. Pitcher Rube Waddell was with the Athletics, and pitcher Christy Mathewson, a fullback for Pittsburgh. So the Pittsburgh Stars were claimed as the champions by the league president. The first National Football League's president, Dave Barry, in 1902, was the Pittsburgh Stars. Very interesting. We'll come back to that. But there was a tournament that was scheduled to be played. As the season wound down and the holidays were upon the country, the manager of Madison Square Garden in New York City, named Tom O'Rourke, he had an issue. He had a big, beautiful building that would be devoid of any people on New Year's Day in 1903. And there were plenty of social events in the Big Apple occurring. But when the Garden needed something to draw New Yorkers in, as well to keep cash flow going in this expensive venue for the events. Now, New Year's Eve on that year, 1902, was on a Friday, I believe, so New Year's Day was on a Saturday. So it's going to be a nice long weekend where people and celebrate the holiday, much like we've had in years past. So O'Rourke stood in this indoor giant stadium and tried to envision something different for the fans to watch. And it dawned on him finally that perhaps the exciting game of football could come indoors. And maybe this pro circuit that had the 4 teams claiming the title would find resolution in a tournament format in New York City. Well, Tom got to thinking. He strategically plotted the idea out. He would definitely invite the Philly teams and Watertown. But would anybody in a big city pay a penny to see a Pittsburgh team play? Probably not, he figured. So the stars were scratched from the invite list. Watertown, they ended up declining the invite as they were worried that may taint their claim to the 1900 title that we just talked about a second ago. The Athletics and the Phillies, they didn't accept intact clubs either. Rather, they combined into a partial semblance of a team to play in the O'Rourke tourney. The 1980 PFRA Coffin Corner Post claims this roster blend. The squad, made up of 8 Phillies and 4 Athletics, boasted Charlie Gilbert, 3 times All-American end, and Blondie Wallace, twice named to the 2nd AA team at tackle. And the center, W.E. Bachman, who had also received a few AA plaudits at Lafayette. And several others had names recognizable in New York back then. These included Curly Davidson at fullback and Benjamin Franklin Roller, a great player at several positions. So this was a Philly all-star mashup team, easily the hands-on favorite to win a tourney. O'Rourke and the Philadelphia contingent then did a genius act of marketing promotion. He rebranded this squad as a New York team so as to give his hometown audience a solid odds-on favorite to cheer for. However, these turned down invitations and morphed teams were not part of the organizer's plan. But he would roll the punches, and Tom filled the rest of the card the best teams that he could bring in from the area. First of all, there was the New York Knickerbockers Field Club. It was a Big Apple team, along with the Orange, New Jersey Athletic Club. Neither one of these clubs were powerhouses to the caliber of the Athletics Phillies mixed roster, at least on paper, but they were by no means fodder for the slaughter either. Another entry, the Syracuse Athletic Club, promised a competitive team, and the entrants were rounded out with the Warlow Athletic Club that promised some good talent on its roster, along with a well-represented cheering section. So the field was complete, with 5 teams for the indoor exhibition. Now, placing the game of football indoors in restricted dimensions proved to be a hurdle that O'Rourke and company had to overcome. The playing surface was reduced to 70 yards long from goal to goal and about 35 yards wide. And we have to remember that back in 1902, from goal line to goal line, it was 110 yards, much like the Canadian field is today. And the width of the square garden turf was reduced about 40% too from a normal playing field in 1902. Then there was a matter of the playing surface. A New York Times article describes the planner's solution as this. The wooden flooring of the big garden was taken up, and the gridiron was laid out on an earthen surface, which proved to be rather too sticky and holding for fast work. So the speed and agility of some of the players were nullified by the sloppy, treacherous track, so the speed kills Monteith would be all but absent during the tourney. It's going to be a war in the trenches. So perhaps the biggest blow to the strategy of the game of 1902 was the kicking restrictions. This is 4 years before the legal forward pass was introduced into the game of football. So punting the ball was an extremely important element and strategy of the game then. Author Timothy Brown, in his splendid book, How Football Became Football, 150 Years of the Game's Evolution, fills us in that the 1902 season, punts were very different than we know them today. Prior to some 1903 rules tweaks, the player that punted the ball could make his own teammates eligible to recover and possess a loose punted ball by racing past them downfield. Every teammate that the punter could advance beyond downfield would become a viable recovery candidate, much like the onside free kicks we know today. So basically those punters are kicking a ball and they're hauling tail all the way down the field, trying to pass as many of their players as they can, fellow players they can, to make them eligible to recover the punt. Also, with the ceiling height of Madison Square Garden's arena at issue, the punt arcs were generally restricted, thus the distance of the kicks were affected too. But the schedules of the tourney used some wise tactics to make it intriguing for the patrons to attend the events. First up, it was the New York Philadelphians against the Syracuse Athletic Club. The logic was that the fans could get an emotional connection to their so-called hometown team, which was, all those Philadelphia All-Stars in that team they called New York, as they were thought to be easily dispatched the threat from Central New York State and Syracuse. Day 2 would pit the Warlow AC team against the Knickerbockers. The winners of the second night would surely have to face the locals from Philly and supposedly be badly beaten so that the powerhouse New York roster could claim to be the best in that state, in the Empire State, and then the evening number 3 of entertainment battle would be the representatives of New Jersey who had rested since then and the Orange Athletic Club for the title of the World Series champ against the New York Club. New York versus New Jersey. That's the way they wanted to sum it up and have that title. However, as in many cases, the best laid plans sometimes have a big hitch in them. The 1902 World Series football competition, and this fly in the ointment was the Syracuse club, as they groomed their roster accordingly, and they took their desire to win it all very seriously. The Syracuse Athletic Club commissioned Frank Buck O'Neill to beef up the roster of the club and become the ultimate competitors for the format. O'Neill would later go on to be a very successful coach at Syracuse University, but he showed the gridiron organizational skills that he would later use early on here in this tournament. Buck O'Neill built the team from the outside in, with himself on one end and a tough player named Carver on the other, and then they searched for strength up the middle. Well, they found Jack Wright, a Columbia player. He proved to be a strong center they needed, and the other pieces fell into place. Well, one side of the line of Wright, they had the Carlisle Indian School standout brothers, Holly Pierce and Bemis Pierce. Magnificently, they filled the line on that one side of Wright. And the other set of brothers in Glenn Pop Warner, that guy, the one that coached Carlisle later on and became an excellent coach, and Pop Warner football is named after, and his sibling, Bill Warner, the All-American from Cornell, as they would shore up the other side in the trenches. So we have a very solid line. Ends, tackles, guards, center, everybody's, an all-star on there. The more than capable regular quarterback of the Syracuse AC team, named Moore, he held his position, while the recruits from Watertown's team and Phil Draper, Mason, and Boker represented the Red Blacks on the Syracuse squad. So the Philly boys would undoubtedly have their hands full and not have the cakewalk that was expected by most. This all-Syracuse team practiced daily inside at the Syracuse Armory, and then they were prepared for the indoor style of play. When they finally arrived to the night when they were going to be playing, just a few days before New Year's Eve in 1902, it was a hard-fought battle, and the only scoring of the whole night was Boker's plunge over the goal line in the second half to lead Syracuse to an unexpected 6-0 victory. Syracuse upset the New York Philadelphians, will say. Well, Pop Warner, though, he suffered a laceration to the head early in the game, but he finished the game. But it afforded him to complete the game, but he proved to be serious enough to prevent him from playing further in the tournament. So they're down one lineman. Night 2 saw another competitive game as the Knickerbockers bested Warlow's squad 11-6. Some papers are reporting the score was 12-6. Doesn't really matter. They won by 5 or 6. They won the game, Knickerbockers. The showdown in the evening of 3 of the World Series football had an interesting replacement for the now injured Glenn Warner, as Blondie Wallace of now dispatched New York Philadelphians filled the bill on the Syracuse line. So Pop Warner gets hurt. The team that Syracuse beat, the New York Philadelphian squad, they take their best player off the line because they're out of the tournament, Blondie Wallace, who's a star player at Penn, University of Penn, some great Philadelphia teams. Later at in the Ohio League and played there quite a bit. Well, Blondie Wallace is now on that team to beat him, replacing Glenn Warner. So that's a kind of an odd substitution. And according to a New York Tribune report on January 1st, 1903, the Knickerbockers, feeling a little bit slighted in this replacement scenario, threatened to sit out the New Year's Eve game unless they were promised a minimum of $250 purse for playing up from the original $100 guarantee. Their stall tactic worked too, as the team leaders were handed a demand in cash before the game, and Syracuse's All-Stars put a whooping on the now $250 richer Knickerbockers 36-0 to set themselves up for the tournament title on Friday, January 2nd. This game was so one-sided that reports are that the second half was reduced to a mere 10 minutes long. We have some great newspaper articles from these early 1900 papers, too, on PigskinDispatch.com. Make sure you check those out. Well, O'Rourke put some fanfare flavor into the final game of the World Series of Football in 1902. The fans were able to witness a Gaelic football exhibition primer match prior to the Syracuse versus Orange showdown. The Kickhams of New York against Brooklyn's Emmets in the 15-on-15 Gaelic contest probably churned up the already loose sod of the makeshift arena surface and really got that crowd fired up, I'm sure, too. In the tournament finale, the well-rested Orange AC was no match for their Syracuse opponents, and they didn't fare any better than the Knickerbockers did the night before, or a couple nights before anyway, also falling 36-0, although they did endure the entire 40 minutes of the game. Now, that's quite different than we know in pro football today, but in 1902, there was a National Football League, a World Series played in football about 10 months earlier than the Major League Baseball played their first championship series of the same name, when the Pittsburgh Pirates fell in an upset to the Boston Americans 5-3 in early October 1903. So football had a series called the World Series 10 months before baseball did. And that's unbelievable, too. But it was mainly baseball teams that were playing in this early National Football League. And the tournament that O'Rourke put together was he really wanted to have those baseball teams playing in it. But even though they got subbed out and with some other teams that were available to play. So we're certainly glad you were able to join us today. We hope you're able to join us each and every day. We bring you football history each and every day. PigskinDispatch.com, your portal to positive football history. And a Sports History Network, your headquarters of sports yesteryear, where we are one of about 26 different podcasts on that great network, sportshistorynetwork.com. You can find out some great and interesting guests and hosts bringing you sports each and every day. Wide variety. There's thousands of downloads you can get caught up on, so you can really do some binge listening during these holiday seasons when you have some time off. You want to escape from the family for just a few minutes and listen to something that's really going to educate you. And our podcasts are family friendly, so the kids can listen to them also, and probably all going to learn a little bit something. And if you hear something that you like or you want to comment on, feel free to talk to any of us. You can email me at pigskinddispatch@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at pigskinddispatch. Facebook page is Pigskin Dispatch. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a great Gridiron Day.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, PigskinDispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. PigskinDispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham. at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.